Would you risk your future just to reject someone in power, even if it meant losing everything? I did. I rejected my professor's private study session invite and ended up with an F. When I appealed, my file mysteriously vanished. When I complained, they told me to retake the course. So I did, and then I taught it. And trust me, that's not even the best part. My name is Lucas. I'm 24 now, but this shitshow started when I was 22 and stupid enough to think hard work was enough to survive college politics. I was a computer science major with a spotless GPA, no disciplinary marks, and just enough caffeine in my system to power a small city. I didn't flirt. I didn't slack. Apparently, that made me dangerous. Let me set the scene. Mid-semester, I had a 94% in Dr. Karen's data structures course. I wasn't just surviving, I was crushing it. Weekly quizzes? Nailed. Midterm? Top 5%. Participation? Yeah, I actually showed up and didn't scroll Reddit during lectures. Dr. Karen was one of those professors who loved the sound of her own voice. Her syllabus was longer than most dissertations, and half of it was just thinly veiled flexing about her industry connections. But hey, she could teach. I'll give her that. Then, a couple of weeks before finals, I got an email. Just one line. Would love to discuss your final project in more detail. Want to stop by my office after hours? No official meeting time. No academic reason. Just vibes. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe she was just being extra. I replied politely, suggested a time during office hours. She ignored that. 2 days later, she cornered me after class, leaned in way too close, and said, "You really should reconsider. Some things are better discussed privately." That's when the alarm bells went off. I'm not an idiot. I may have been born at night, but not last night. So I made up a fake group project meeting and got the hell out of there. Awkward? Sure. But I figured that would be the end of it. Finals came and went. I turned in everything early, triple-checked formatting, and even cited extra sources, because I know how people like her get when you don't kiss the rubric's ass. I walked out of that exam room thinking I'd sealed an A. Then the grades dropped. F. I actually laughed out loud at first. Like, I thought it was a glitch in the system. I refreshed the page 3 times. Still an F. No comments, no notes, nothing on the submission portal. Just a digital middle finger. So I emailed Dr. Karen, politely asking if there was a mistake. No reply. I followed up. Still nothing. A week later, I went to the department office and filed a formal grade dispute. The admin lady looked confused, opened the system, and said, "Huh. There's no record of your final project here. Are you sure you submitted it? Are you fucking kidding me?" Not only had I submitted it, I'd received the time-stamped confirmation email from the damn system. I showed it to her. She frowned, said she'd escalate to the dean's office. Great. Now it's a scavenger hunt. So I went to see the dean in person. Martin. The guy's built like a soggy marshmallow and speaks entirely in PR speak. He scanned the papers I brought and gave me this practiced smile that said, "I get paid too much to care." He looked up and said, "Lucas, it's probably just a clerical mix-up. The end of the semester can be chaotic. Why don't we just have you retake the course in the fall to clean this up?" Excuse me? You want me to waste another semester and delay my graduation because your system glitched and my professor ghosted me? But what could I do? Appeals take months. They knew that. It was checkmate. I walked out of that office so fucking pissed I thought I'd break the door handle off. They weren't just screwing with my grade. They were screwing with my future. My scholarship had GPA requirements. My internship was hanging by a thread. And now, all because I didn't want to play after-hours study buddy, I was academically screwed. That night, I drank half a bottle of gas station whiskey, rage-ate an entire family-sized bag of Doritos, and started planning. If they wanted me to take the course again, fine. But I wasn't going in unarmed this time. Fall semester rolled around, and I re-enrolled in data structures. This time, I treated it like a battle plan. I knew every move Dr. Karen could make, so I set traps everywhere. First, I created a digital paper trail. Every assignment submission got a confirmation screenshot. Every office hours visit got a calendar invite. Every email thread was saved as a PDF. I even recorded my own coding demonstrations on my phone, so I had timestamp proof of exactly what I submitted and when. Second, I rigged the grading sessions. When Dr. Karen pulled me aside to discuss improvements, I turned my phone on speaker and propped it on my laptop. She didn't notice. I captured her suggesting that I could improve my grade in exchange for let's say, extra credit. When she accused me of sloppy code in that meeting, I had the original code file open on my screen, proof my work was clean. She backpedaled like a politician caught lying. Midterm time, she cornered me again. This time, she accused me of plagiarism. She said my sorting algorithm looked too much like sample code from Stack Overflow. I stayed calm. I pulled up my recorded coding session from 2 weeks before and showed her exactly how I built it, live. She stuttered, stared at her notes, and said nothing. Then came the final project. She marked it down to a C without explanation. Not even a comment. I emailed her asking why. She ghosted me. When I reminded her about our meeting notes, she replied with a curt, "Grades are final." I took all my evidence to the appeals board. I printed every screenshot, every recording, every PDF. I laid it out like an exhibit in a trial. The board members shuffled papers, watched a 10-second clip of her suggesting extra credit favors, and compared my original code to the plagiarized claim. They looked at me, then at her, and reversed the grade. I walked out with an A. Walking back to my dorm, I felt a rush unlike any victory lap. It wasn't just about reclaiming a grade. It was about exposing someone who abused power. I wasn't angry anymore. I was strategic. Word spread among students. Jesse, my TA peer, approached me in the computer lab. He said, "Bro, everyone's talking. You made her look like an idiot." I shrugged. Glad to help. No need to toot my own horn. The rumors would do that. Priya, Marcus, and Leo, 3 freshmen who struggled in that class, came up next. They told me how Dr. Karen had docked their labs for format errors that she never mentioned until grades. I guided them to gather their own evidence. They sent me their screenshots, their website source code, and their time-stamped emails. We had a small dossier growing. Meanwhile, Dr. Karen's attitude changed. She stopped assigning extra office hours. Lectures got shorter, emails fewer. I saw her in the hallway glare at me like I was some rogue virus in her system. Funny, considering I was the only one actually following her syllabus. By midterms, she tried another dirty trick. She submitted a lab report under my name, without my code, claimed I plagiarized from another student. I got an email from the department. "You've been reported for academic dishonesty. Please schedule a meeting." I almost smiled. At that meeting, I brought passports in academic style. I showed them timestamps proving I was in Germany that weekend for a hackathon. I showed confirmation emails, flight logs, and hotel QR codes. Dr. Karen looked like someone who had just realized their villain plan had a fatal flaw. The charges were dropped before the afternoon sun set. Through it all, I kept my grades pristine. I passed every quiz, every assignment, and every lab. I was careful, methodical, relentless. When the semester finally ended, I didn't just have my A. I had a reputation. Professors whispered my name in faculty lounges. Students high-fived me on campus. I got letters of recommendation from other departments. They loved the whole student rights activist angle. Most importantly, I had proof. A mountain of it. Enough to escalate beyond personal vindication. I graduated with honors that December, diploma in hand, feeling like a bat signal lit up for justice. I moved out of my dorm and into an apartment, knowing one day I'd put all this evidence to use in a way Dr. Karen would never see coming. Because grades can reset, semesters can pass, but power abused stays marked. And I was marking every bullet point. When the spring TA applications opened, I figured it was my shot. I'd fixed my grade, built a reputation, and made connections with supportive faculty in other departments. I spent a weekend polishing my resume, highlighting my appeals victory like it was some heroic crusade for academic integrity. I wrote a cover letter dripping with dry humor about turning adversity into advocacy, and hit submit. A week later, I got the email. I was in. Jesse, my friend from the retake semester, patted me on the back so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. "Looks like you go from student to sidekick," he said. Sidekick? I'd settle for an accomplice. The training week was a breeze. I learned grading standards, office software quirks, and the fine art of giving feedback without triggering anxiety attacks. When I stepped into my first tutorial session, I felt more prepared than Dr. Karen ever was. By midterm season, I'd built a decent following. Students respected me because I'd been in their shoes. I didn't grade on a curve. I offered extra help, clear rubrics, and honest praise when it was due. I even joked about departmental politics in my welcome slides. deadpan lines about how your friendly TA will not vanish like lost grade disputes. Word reached Dr. Karen. She cornered me in the hallway one morning, voice low enough that no one overheard. "I hear you're playing teacher now," she sneered. "Let's hope you don't crash and burn." I just smiled. Thanks for the vote of confidence. A few days later, I saw her email to the department chair recommending that I not be assigned to her course. She cited lack of experience and inappropriate academic commentary in my slides. I forwarded that email to Jesse and the chair of the ethics committee, CNG the dean. That got Karen a warning about unprofessional conduct. I considered it a free lesson in institutional hypocrisy. Then came the news. Dr. Karen was taking an indefinite sabbatical for personal reasons. No one knew what that meant, but her course needed an instructor ASAP. The chair called me in, looked me up and down, and said, "Lucas, we're losing you to graduation soon. Can you cover data structures for the semester? We trust you." Let that sink in. The same course that tried to kill my GPA was now mine to command. My jaw almost hit the floor. I managed to say, "Of course," and pretended that rocking this gig was my lifelong dream. I spent the weekend rewriting lectures. I distilled her bloated slides down to essentials, clear definitions, real-world use cases, and no time for power trips. I updated the lab assignments to focus on practical debugging rather than meaningless puzzles. I even renamed one module Avoiding Grade Traps and inserted a case study about academic abuse, lightly disguised, but clear enough for anyone paying attention. On day one, I walked into her old classroom and stared at the lectern. It felt surreal. I plugged in my laptop and watched the students file in. Some gave me cautious nods, others outright cheers. Priya, Marcus, and Leo were front row, grinning like they'd won the lottery. I started the lecture with a disclaimer. "I'm filling in this semester. If anything looks off, let me know. Otherwise, let's get to work." No grandstanding. No mention of Karen's name. Yet everyone knew exactly why they were here. Over the next few weeks, the class hummed along. I answered questions, debugged code on the fly, and kept an eye out for potential grade disputes. A few students whispered about how I was the best instructor they'd ever had. That felt good, but it wasn't the goal. The real goal was to expose Karen's pattern. So I slipped in subtle references during my ethics slides. A slide titled Professional Boundaries listed red flags, like private study sessions, unexplained grade changes, and ghosting student appeals. I dropped that slide between binary trees and hash functions. Some students raised eyebrows. I let it lie. Then Priya came to office hours with her laptop in hand. She'd pulled up old forum posts where Karen bragged about keeping students in line. There were screenshots of private messages to male students, promising grade boosts for extra help at odd hours. I saved those files, added them to our growing digital dossier, and sent them anonymously to the Academic Affairs Office. Next, Marcus emailed me about an assignment grade that had suddenly vanished. Sound familiar? We tracked it, found it, and restored it. Leo overheard two other students comparing notes on lab docking. When they realized I could reverse unjust deductions, they flooded me with cases. Within days, half the class had formal complaints pending. The investigation kicked off quietly. I stayed out of the drama, kept teaching, and let the wheels turn. The department chair thanked me for my diligence and said they'd never seen student-led oversight at that scale. I joked, just doing my TA job. Then word came down. The ethics committee had recommended a full faculty review of Dr. Karen's conduct. Meanwhile, the dean invited me to testify about the anonymous case studies I'd presented. I showed up armed with my recordings, emails, and printed complaints. Board members grimaced as they watched snippets of Karen's own words turned against her. She tried to fire off a defamation notice through the faculty union. That blew up in her face when the union rep reminded her she'd refused to provide her own contract paperwork during negotiations. Poetic. Finally, the committee released its findings. Karen's tenure review would be put on hold indefinitely, and her teaching license would be revoked pending state board approval. It was the academic equivalent of frozen bank accounts. I watched her social media vanish. No more proud professor lectures, no more conference brag posts. Just a ghost town of deleted profiles. The department issued a statement about personal well-being and campus unity. Everyone knew better. On my last day teaching her old course, the students named it Intro to Karma. Someone made a sign. I walked up to the lectern, tapped the sign, and said, I guess this is fitting. They laughed. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I handed out final project feedback personally, stamped each assignment with a red pen, and closed my laptop. No graduation cap could have felt more earned. I left that classroom for the final time, keys in hand, and walked past Karen's empty office. The nameplate was gone. The door was locked. It felt like passing a crime scene. I stepped into the hall, filled with sunlight and possibility, and realized the apprentice had become the problem she never saw coming. Now I'm just Lucas, student, TA, and occasional academic avenger. And every Monday, I get to teach on my terms. When I stepped into Dr. Karen's old lecture hall for the first time as an instructor, it felt like walking into a crime scene. The chairs were the same scuffed plastic, the whiteboard still stained with half-erased diagrams, the projector mount wobbling like a drunk professor who'd spent one too many nights lecturing beyond sanity. But this time, the podium was mine, and the red pen in my hand was loaded. I started day one with the usual housekeeping, attendance, syllabus overview, lab schedules, then cut to what I called ground rules. No backdoor grade negotiations. No ghosting student appeals. No surprise policy changes in the last week of class. The last two rules earned a few chuckles and nods. Students who'd survived Karen's reign recognized the tone. Then I launched into ethics. I'd rewritten the module entirely. Instead of generic discussions about plagiarism, I presented anonymous case study, an unnamed professor who invited individual male students to private consultations that always ended in grade reversals. I described the pattern in dry, academic language, citing purposely vague but accurate details, late-night office hours, unlogged grade changes, missing appeal paperwork. Heads tilted. Phones were discreetly recorded. Phones I knew would leak. Mid-lecture, Marcus raised his hand and asked about safeguarding boundaries when power is abused. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The question hung in the air like a red flag. When I answered, I spoke plainly. Faculty hold disproportionate power over grades. That power can be weaponized. And the only antidote is transparency and documentation. After class, Priya slid me a folder. Inside were screenshots of old forum posts. Dr. Karen is boasting to a colleague about using her tenure status to keep students in line. Poignant line, grades aren't suggestions. I photocopied those pages, labeled them Exhibit B, and slipped them into the Student Affairs mailbox under for immediate review. Over the next week, complaints began to pile up. Leo told me his midterm score dropped 2 grade levels overnight, with no feedback given. I helped him draft a formal inquiry, attaching time-stamped code files and submission records. The department responded within 48 hours, an unprecedented turnaround, prompted, I'm convinced, by the mounting dossiers. Meanwhile, the rumor mill clawed through hallway whispers. Jessie, my TA colleague, forwarded me an email chain from Karen's department meeting where she griped about that student uprising. She wanted names and punishments. The chair replied curtly, "We're investigating." That single line was the academic equivalent of a predator being told, "Don't let the door hit your tenure on the way out." I kept teaching with clinical detachment. When labs opened, I focused on debugging techniques instead of mind games. When quizzes came, I graded transparently, posting detailed rubrics and comments. Every time a student asked why a point was deducted, I welcomed the question. That simple respect for procedure, something Karen had weaponized, felt revolutionary. Mid-semester, the ethics committee called me to testify. I walked into their windowless conference room with printed dossiers, my laptop queued with recorded audio, and a leather-bound binder titled Case Files. No dramatic reveal. I laid the materials out. They reviewed the recordings of Karen offering extra credit favors. They read the forum posts. They saw the appeals board minutes where my plagiarism defense was logged. They nodded, jotting notes. Afterward, one committee member said quietly, "This is thorough." No praise beyond that, but I didn't need it. Momentum was on our side. As the investigation gathered steam, Karen tried to strike back. She issued a defamation threat, vague legalese demanding I retract my false allegations or face consequences. I forwarded the notice to the dean, C&G the union rep, and added my own note. Please advise how to proceed. The union rep called Karen on policy violations within an hour. The threat evaporated like bad coffee. Students in her former class started petitioning the university for a formal apology letter from Dr. Karen and reforms to the ethics curriculum. I helped draft the petition, kept it factual, bulleted incidents, links to policy documents, and requested outcomes. Within 2 days, it had 200 signatures. The dean's office acknowledged receipt and promised appropriate action. Meanwhile, word spread across campus. Other students from different departments came forward with similar stories. A geology TA had been forced into weekend consultations to salvage lab grades. A literature professor had misplaced essays until students capitulated to extra assignments. It was never isolated. It was systemic. And Karen was just the most egregious example. By week 10, the ethics committee recommended a full faculty review and suspension pending the outcome. Word reached me that Karen's teaching license was on the verge of revocation. I saw her nameplate removed from her door. Her office was empty. Her email auto-replies spoke of personal health concerns. On the last day of the term, I entered the lecture hall for the final exam briefing. The chairs were arranged in exam rows. The projector screen displayed, in bold letters, "Final exam, closed book." I stood at the podium, closed a branded notebook, and said, "Today marks the end of this course's chapter on ethics in academia. Remember, transparency beats tyranny every time." No applause. Just students taking notes, ready for the test. After they filed out, Jesse appeared with a trophy he'd made. Cheap plastic, gold paint. A plaque read, "Best substitute professor ever." I laughed and put it on my desk. Felt right. That night, I walked past Dr. Karen's empty hallway. Her office door was locked, her nameplate was gone, and her chair was absent. I pressed my palm to the cool wood, thought about the chaos I'd set off, and felt a quiet satisfaction. I hadn't just taught a class. I'd rewritten its rules. And next semester, when I'm no longer interim but full-time, I'll walk into this room again. Only then, it won't be Karen's course. It'll be Lucas's legacy. The moment the semester ended, I knew the real payoff was just beginning. Everyone else saw finals week as a grind, meant to be survived, forgotten, and then buried under summer plans. For me, it was the calm before the storm that would bury Dr. Karen's career forever. First, the official announcement hit campus email. Dr. Karen Thompson will not be returning to teach. No hint of resignation, no mention of allegations, just a sterile line that felt like a bullet point. Word in the faculty lounge was that her teaching license had been suspended pending final review. The state board didn't mess around when ethics violations stacked up that high. I woke up that morning to a flood of notifications. Priya texted, "It's over." Marcus sent a screenshot of the state board website showing license suspended. Leo posted on the student forum, "Our interim is now permanent." Someone joked, "Data structures is now Lucas structures." I laughed, forwarded it to Jesse, and typed back, "Legacy, baby." The department didn't waste time filling the vacancy. By the next week, I'd officially been offered a full-time lecturer contract. No tenure track, fine by me. Just a stable paycheck, campus benefits, and the authority to continue cleaning up whatever academic rot Karen left behind. I signed the contract in the dean's office, where Martin actually shook my hand without that marshmallow smile. It felt good. Even better was the student response. During the welcome back week, students framed a banner at the door of the lecture hall. "Welcome back, Professor Lucas." I walked in, half expecting pranks, but found a genuine cheer. Priya, Marcus, Leo, and half the class from last term were there, handing me red pens as gifts. Someone taped the cheap, "Best substitute professor ever" trophy I'd kept on the desk. I set it front and center. That day's lecture started like any other. No fanfare, no slapping anyone on the back, just a click of the projector and a nod to the syllabus. But halfway through, I paused. "You might notice a few changes from last semester," I said. "First off, we're ditching the old office door knock routine. You should actually come to office hours without fear of grade ploys. Second, I renamed one module. It's now Ethical Code Practices, not Karen's weird power trips." The room erupted in middle-aged laughter from confused seniors and relieved nods from the rest. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the ethics committee's final report dropped. It was a 30-page document fully detailing her misconduct. Pages described how she repeatedly offered to boost grades in private meetings, how she destroyed student appeals files, and how she manipulated faculty channels to quash complaints. It read like a horror story disguised as academia. The department circulated a redacted summary to faculty and students. Professor Thompson's departure follows substantiated findings of violations of university conduct and state licensing standards. The university reaffirms its commitment to academic integrity. Then they added, "We apologize to any student affected and invite you to ongoing forums with student affairs." That apology felt hollow, but at least it was public. I posted the link on the student forum with a note. Justice doesn't always come fast. But it came. I got invited to speak at one of those forums alongside the dean and a representative from the state board. I had my notes ready, 3 bullet points: documentation, transparency, and student agency. The forum was packed. Students lined the walls, and I heard one freshman whisper to another, "He actually taught us to fight back." I presented the distilled case studies, highlighted how anonymous complaints snowballed into official action, and urged everyone to never forget that they hold power too. That afternoon, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside was a letter from Dr. Karen's attorney, an unsuccessful attempt at defamation, demanding I remove false statements from public posts. It cited the redacted summary, but the attorney's signature line was missing the firm's name. Clearly, she'd been burned once too often. I dropped it in the recycling bin and moved on. Summer rolled in, classes paused, but I stayed busy. I ran a student workshop on surviving power imbalance in academia, complete with printed guides on documenting grade disputes, drafting appeals, and using campus ombud services. Over 50 students RSVP'd, mostly from STEM fields, but some from art history and business. When I wrapped up at the Student Union Center, Priya dropped by with homemade cookies shaped like laptops. "Because you hacked the system," she said. I took a bite. Sweet, but not as sweet as watching Karen's name vanish from the faculty directory. In my office, next to the window overlooking the quad, I arranged the binder labeled case files on a shelf. It sat there like a trophy, hardbound, bulging with printouts, all the evidence preserved in neat plastic sleeves. I didn't flaunt it. I didn't brag. It was just there, a reminder that documentation works better than outrage. When the fall semester approached, a reporter from the campus newspaper requested an interview. I agreed. The article titled "From F to Faculty: How One Student Exposed Abuse" ran front page, complete with a photo of me pointing at a whiteboard. Students tagged me on social media. The provost forwarded me a congratulatory email. My phone buzzed nonstop with LinkedIn requests, academic networking platforms, I guess. I deleted most of them. I realized then that my greatest victory wasn't in getting Karen fired. It was in rewriting the system from the inside. Every syllabus I drafted, every lab assignment I designed, every office hour I held was a chance to reinforce fairness and respect. I rolled out a new policy. If a student flags an issue with my grading, I must personally review it within 48 hours and respond in writing. No ifs, no buts. It went into the course handbook and campus policy under transparency initiatives. The department approved it immediately. Maybe they wanted to avoid another scandal, but it still felt good. By mid-October, students started calling the course Intro to Karma in hushed hallway chats. The nickname stuck and morphed into a sort of unofficial brand. A student society organized study groups called Karma Crew, complete with custom t-shirts. I got one and wore it on Casual Friday. I felt like a rock star. One crisp morning, I walked across campus to the faculty parking lot. My key fob unlocked the gate to a reserved spot. I stepped out of my car, coffee in hand, and noticed a small white sign on the door of Karen's old office suite, reserved for visiting lecturers. Visiting lecturers who never came. That empty hallway was my daily reminder that power abused is power lost. I settled into my chair, opened the blinds, and looked at the rows of empty offices. The silence was satisfying. For so long, that corridor had echoed with Karen's footsteps and her students' whispers. Now it belonged to me, filled instead with honest conversation, collaborative research posters, and the steady click of red pens marking fair feedback. That evening, I met Jesse and Brian at our old favorite pub. We toasted to the end of an era. Jesse said, "You never wanted to be a TA for the glory. You just wanted to finish the game." Brian nodded. "Checkmate, professor." I smiled, took a sip of my beer, and said, "I'll take it." When I got home, I drafted a short reflection for my personal blog. How a single F taught me the power of persistence, how small acts of documentation can topple empires, and how integrity isn't just an ideal, it's a practice. I titled it From F to Faculty. My revenge isn't personal, it's procedural. I didn't expect it to go viral, but it got shared by academic advocacy groups and landed in a couple of education newsletters. A week later, I held a faculty meeting where I proposed a peer review system for grading transparency. Some older professors rolled their eyes, others nodded. Before the meeting ended, the department chair said, "Lucas, great initiative. Let's pilot it next term." That pilot felt like the ultimate mic drop. The system that tried to silence me now wanted my blueprint for reform. Walking back to my office after that meeting, I passed by Dr. Karen's old classroom one last time. The door was closed. The lights were off. I pressed my ear against it for a second, just to hear nothing. No whispered lectures, no office hour rendezvous, just silence. I tapped the door frame, straightened my back, and thought, sabbatical forever. That was the name of the victory. No more sabbatical needed. Her era was closed. Mine was just beginning. And every Monday, when I unlocked that lecture hall door, I remember, the apprentice became the problem she never saw coming, and she'll never teach here again.